It was nearly dark by the time Maya Reyes stood up from beneath the fire truck. The chill of evening crept across the city garage, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. Her back ached. Her fingers were stiff, knuckles cracked, grime packed under her nails like badges of pride. She wiped her forehead with the back of her wrist, leaving a smear of grease across her temple. Most of the other mechanics had already gone home. The fluorescent lights above flickered and buzzed, echoing through the near-empty warehouse. Only a few tools clinked faintly in their drawers as the walls settled into quiet. Maya stood alone in the twilight, the only woman on the city's emergency vehicle maintenance crew. She was used to the silence, and used to being the last one there. She walked toward the corner of the lot, where a lone ambulance sat angled awkwardly, as if ashamed to be there. Unit 34. The red paint on its bumper was scraped, the siren dome cracked, and a thin trail of coolant leaked beneath it like a bleeding wound. The crew had tagged it out of service and dropped it off without much fanfare. Maya knelt beside the front wheel, her eyes narrowing. She ran her hand under the frame and felt the slack in the belt. Too much. She popped the hood and leaned in. The stench of burnt oil and gasoline slapped her face. The fuel injector was locked. The battery was corroded. Cables looked torn. Nothing about it said ready. She checked the logs. The paperwork hadn't even been filed yet. It wasn't on the service schedule until the following week. But her instincts were loud, clear, and insistent. Something told her this wasn't a vehicle that could wait. She thought of the call that could come tomorrow. Someone trapped, bleeding, unconscious, and a dispatcher saying, "Sorry, no units available." She'd seen it happen, without thinking. Twice, Maya grabbed her toolbox. With the overhead lights dimmed and her breath visible in the cold air, she began her work. She replaced the fuel injector first, the hardest job, using one salvaged from a wrecked unit they'd decommissioned. The fan belt she improvised from a longer one, trimming and tensioning it with zip ties and sheer skill. She stripped the corroded wires and rewired the battery harness herself, wrapping the connections in fresh tape. She flushed the brake fluid and patched a leak in the radiator hose with a clamp she fashioned from 2 broken mounts. Time vanished. The clock ticked past 9 p.m., then 10. Her stomach growled, but she ignored it. Sweat dampened her collar even as the air grew colder. At one point she sliced her knuckle on a rusted bolt, but she wrapped it in electrical tape and kept going. By the time she slid behind the wheel and turned the key, her hands trembled from exhaustion. The ambulance coughed, sputtered, then roared to life. Maya smiled. She pulled out a pen and scrawled, "A quick note for dispatch. Unit 34, operational. Field test recommended. Maya." She taped it to the dashboard, climbed down, and finally let her shoulders sag. As she walked to the locker room in silence, she thought, "At least it's ready, just in case." The next morning came with grey clouds and drizzle. Maya was halfway, through a cold cup of vending machine coffee, when she was called into the office. Bill Hanley, the supervisor, sat behind his desk like a judge awaiting a guilty plea. A stack of paper sat untouched beside him. His mustache twitched when he spoke. "You worked on Unit 34 last night." It wasn't a question. "Yes," Maya said. "It needed work." Bill picked up a paper and read from it flatly. Unit 34 was marked out of service pending inspection. You had no authorization, no documentation, no safety officer present. It was going to sit a week before anyone even looked at it. That's procedure. It wouldn't have made it through the weekend. It needed... "You don't get to decide what it needs," he snapped. Maya stiffened. "We have chains of command for a reason. You made an unauthorized repair. That's a liability. If something had gone wrong—" "But it didn't," she interrupted. Bill leaned back in his chair. He tapped the edge of the desk twice, as if finalizing a thought. "You're dismissed, effective immediately." The words fell like a hammer. She stared at him. "You're firing me." You can turn in your badge and clear your locker by noon. No. Further explanation. No thanks. No recognition. She had crossed an invisible line, not by failing, but by doing too much. By the time Maya walked out, a few mechanics had heard the news. Some gave her looks, sympathy maybe. Others looked away. No one said a word. The walls echoed her footsteps as she packed her bag. As she bent down to pick up her wrench, it slipped from her hand and clattered on the floor. No one helped her pick it up. 3 days passed. She stayed in her apartment scrolling through job boards. She made calls. Every conversation ended the same. We'll let you know, or we're fully staffed, or we heard you left the city garage. Word had gotten around. She began to doubt herself. Maybe she had overstepped. Maybe they were right. On the 4th morning, as she stirred a spoon through black coffee, her phone buzzed. A headline flashed across her screen. Breaking. Ambulance. Makes record run through downtown. Saves billionaire CEO. She blinked. Tapped the link. The photo was low resolution, taken by a passerby. But the ambulance's plate was unmistakable. Unit 34. The article detailed how the CEO of Skybridge Technologies, Jordan Kellerman, suffered a heart attack in his penthouse. Construction had blocked major roads. Emergency response times were delayed. But one rig, a newly repaired ambulance, had made it through in 6 minutes flat. It reached him just in time. Paramedics administered aid within a critical window. Doctors said even a 1-minute delay would have resulted in irreversible damage or death. And that rig was the one she'd repaired. Maya stared at the screen. She hadn't just fixed an engine, she had saved a man's life. 2 more days passed. She tried not to think about it, about how no one knew, how the garage would never mention her name. Then her phone rang. "This is Julia Meredith," a calm voice said. "Chief of Staff for Mr. Jordan Kellerman. He would like to meet with you." Maya froze. "Me?" "Yes. He believes you may have played a critical role in his survival." They arranged a car. It arrived promptly. A sleek black sedan with tinted windows and soft leather seats. The driver didn't speak. As they entered the city's financial district, Maya fidgeted with the cuff of her shirt, still faintly stained from her last job. She hadn't had the money to buy anything new. The building was towering glass and chrome, clean and cold. Security escorted her to the top floor. She expected luxury, but the space was understated, modern, minimal, efficient. And then she saw him, Jordan Kellerman. Tall, silver-haired, a slight limp in his gait as he approached. But alive, awake, moving, he extended his hand. "You're the one who fixed the ambulance." Maya nodded, heart pounding. "Yes. I'm told it wouldn't have made it otherwise." "No, sir. It was in bad shape. I wasn't supposed to touch it, but I couldn't ignore it. You saved my life." She tried to speak, but her throat was tight. She managed, "I was just doing my job." "You were doing far more than that." He walked to the window, looking out at the skyline. "The system we rely on, government fleets, city response times, protocols, they almost failed me. You didn't." She said nothing. "I want to offer you a job." Her breath caught. "A job?" "I want to build a private emergency response fleet. Custom vehicles, optimized equipment, not bound by red tape. I want you to lead it." Maya blinked. "I don't have degrees. I've never managed anything. You make things work. I want that." She hesitated. "What's the salary?" "Triple what the city paid you. You'll hire your own team. You'll have a full lab, your own garage, full autonomy." Maya stepped forward slowly and extended her hand. He shook it. A year later, Maya stood at the center of a pristine garage. The walls gleamed white. State-of-the-art equipment lined the shelves. Half her team were women. A few were former inmates who'd shown promise. All of them were there because someone had once told them no, and they had kept going. Skybridge. Response systems cut emergency response time. Across 3 cities, Maya watched one of her new rigs pull out onto the street. Sleek, quiet, fast. Built from the ground up behind her, encased in glass, sat Unit 34. The old ambulance, the one she'd fixed on a hunch, the one that saved a man's life, the one that changed everything. And every time she passed it, Maya smiled. Not because it made her rich or famous or powerful, but because she knew it mattered.